Welcome to Business Talk, Sister Gawk. I'm Becca, and today's episode is part 3, What the FEMA is Going On. So, what should I do to prepare for a natural disaster? That's the question we kind of left off with in the last episode. Well, I would say, from what I've learned, always store all your work tools that you're not using at your house. This will mean that at least maybe they could qualify for some sort of relief event, even though it will be probably pennies on the dollar of really what that is worth. And I would say this is another thing it's really important to understand. If you are filing a personal claim for your property, for like say your house or whatever, or maybe even if you have renter's insurance, I would recommend you look at the differences between what qualifies, right? So say you have homeowner's insurance, but it doesn't cover flooding and you have a flood come through, well, they're not going to cover any of that. So that's what FEMA would come alongside you and help with. You cannot do both FEMA funding as well as an insurance claim, because if you do the insurance claim and you double dip in both, you're going to have to pay all that FEMA money back. So make sure you keep that understanding in mind about what is qualified and what's not, okay? So the second thing I would do is take pictures of all of your stuff, all of it, whether it's at your business, at your house, whatever. If you're using stuff for business, if you have bought those things for your business, keep a file somewhere in a cloud drive, not just on a local laptop or a phone, just in case that gets destroyed in a natural disaster, so that you can kind of go through mentally and look at the pictures and say, oh yeah, I had one of these. Because especially when it comes to stuff like fire damage, when stuff goes up in flames, it's really hard to go back through and remember personally what all you had. And I would say if you have an online accounting system, that also can be helpful to go through your receipts and see what did you buy, because maybe everything is completely gone and there's nothing left, it's just ash. So it's really hard to understand, is there actually stuff that I bought, or what was the price of it, all that kind of stuff. Like receipts are super important for that kind of stuff when you're comping what the value was. So if you keep an online accounting system, that's really helpful as well. I mean, if it's on your laptop gets saved and you have all your receipts on there too, great. But just kind of thinking through different ways to look at that, because even if you have, say, like paper copies and you have a flood, a lot of those paper receipts will actually bleed, and then you don't even have what's left on the piece of paper because all the ink is gone. So really important to keep receipts in your regular accounting system, and then also keep all of these pictures of what the rooms look like, what the layout looks like. Because the other thing I will say, if you're going to file an insurance claim, is that there is a significant difference in quality of items. And I just had a friend, we were just talking about this a little bit regarding the insurance said, well, this is what your house was worth, or your door and everything. And he's like, no, I just bought that door and replaced it, and it was this much money. And thankfully he had the receipt to show this is exactly how much I paid for this. And that is actually a huge difference in quality. And that's actually something else I learned. If you are not familiar with a software called Xactimate, that was something through this process that I wish I would have known more about, because there are different levels of quality in that software. And a lot of insurance companies use it to evaluate what the compensation cost is going to be. So even stuff like cabinets, for example, the way that the joints come together on a cabinet qualifies the difference between if it's a high quality cabinet or a low quality cabinet. And like, it's really silly, but that's kind of how they determine whether or not it was a high end product or a low end product. And when these things are laid out on your insurance, it can be really confusing. And so in some ways, it's really good to talk with somebody who knows a lot about those softwares and has experience, to make sure that you don't get yourself into a place where the insurance company is saying, well, that doesn't qualify, when really you paid significantly more than they're trying to say that item was worth. So those are just a couple tips that I learned. Taking pictures of your stuff, really valuable, especially before it gets damaged and it's unrecognizable. In addition to that, I think it is easier for you to get started on that process of either reporting to FEMA the list of things like personal tools or whatever that was damaged if you have those pictures, because in some cases, it may not be safe to go back inside your property, or it may not be safe to even drive through the region where your property is located for quite a few weeks until things subside and you're even allowed to get back in the region to look at the stuff. So if you have those things digitally, you can kind of go through and start making that list of here's all the stuff I know I had. And then when you go in later, you can say, okay, I can use this. This is completely destroyed. I can't. And then getting that together is going to be a lot easier to present to FEMA or to present to your insurance company, really depending on the route that you have available. Okay? So the next thing I would say as what you can do is get replacement value insurance, not depreciated value. And this is not something that a lot of insurance companies will tell you the difference between when you're looking at your policies. And I think it's really important to understand the difference. So if you get something damaged, a lot of times insurance companies, if you have this policy in place, they will say, okay, well, we're going to cut you a check for the depreciated value. So your roof was 20 years old, therefore we're only going to pay this much of what lifespan was left on your roof rather than paying to replace your whole roof. And this is important to ask for with your personal property, your house, as well as, say, your business and what you're getting for an insurance policy on your business. Otherwise, that ends up being that you have to comp the difference when you do the replacement, and that comes out of your personal pocket. So evaluating what kind of policy you have and whether that's an umbrella policy that covers a lot of things or whatever it is, just really talk with your insurance agent and make sure you have a good one to understand what policy you're getting. Yes, it's going to be more expensive than the depreciated value, but in this kind of situation, it is dramatically worth the difference, okay? And I just think that that's a wise thing to think about and have a good insurance partner that you're working with. So the next thing I would do to say, here's how to prepare for a natural disaster. And this is a tip that really comes down to the worst situation you possibly could be in. And let's just say that is what I kind of talked about before, that business owner that just purchased a business and they have a huge loan that they're paying off because they didn't have the cash flow to buy it right out or whatever. And now the only option you have from the SBA is to take out another loan and there's no way to collateralize it. Maybe this business is going to fold. And this is honestly the worst case scenario, but it does happen. And so I want you to be thinking through this as a business owner. And one of the things I would say right out the gate, don't use a sole proprietor business if you're going to look at loans or anything like that. Or if you're going to get into a business where you're going to have all of these moving pieces that could affect you personally. So an S Corp or an LLC is a way better way to go when it comes to that liability protection. And I would say keep tight accounting. Never cross mix your personal bank account finances with your business ones. And this is something that a lot of people do, and it's so dangerous because in the event that you say have to declare bankruptcy as a business due to the disaster being unrecoverable, even if looking at leveraging SBA financing, it's not going to work and you don't have any of like the backing to do that, whatever. This is so important. If you cross mix your finances, you basically cut through what's called like the corporate veil of separation between your business and your personal. Okay? And if you go to bankruptcy court as a business, and you have done this, they're going to look at all your books. They're going to look at how your business is structured. They're going to review your bank accounts, all that kind of stuff. If you've done this and you go through bankruptcy court, you now have your personal property and assets liable to pay off the debts of your business. Now, maybe you're like, well, that doesn't even matter because my entire house was destroyed too. Okay, I get it. But this is really crucial because say you get an insurance claim for your house, but your business goes under, they can technically go after that house that the insurance company is fixing. And so you really have to keep those things separate, because the moment you don't, you are putting yourself in a position where that limited liability aspect that you were going for and setting up your business in that way no longer works. It's broken. And that's the whole point of having that limited liability corporation, right? That's an LLC. There's quite a few differences with like the S Corp and everything. But the reality is those things have to stay separate. Your finances have to stay separate. And a lot of people get nervous. Well, what if I like have to buy stuff quick with my account, my credit card or whatever, and then I am like getting the business to pay me back? Well, have receipts for that kind of stuff and reimburse yourself based on the receipts and keep that with your accounting. There is a way to go about that properly. And so talk to your accountant about that. Make sure that you are buttoned up on that side of ensuring that no crossover is happening with your personal finances without clear documentation that it's a reimbursement or whatever. Talk to your accountant. It's so important, because obviously we're preparing for the worst case scenario, but that's what I would say. Make sure that stuff is ready to go. And I really wouldn't look at that sole proprietor when you're thinking about preparing in this way. So the next question I was asking, I don't know if you were, but why is none of this stuff online? Well, that was definitely my question. And I have looked at trying to find even the handout that I received from one of the FEMA workers that they gave me when they were walking through a neighborhood. But for real, I've looked everywhere on the SBA documentation for the numbers and all of that regarding that financial aspect of what was available to businesses. And there was nothing. And I think part of the reason for this is because it changes a lot depending on what the funding is and what Congress decides and what bills go through or whatever. So I think it's probably why they kind of mitigate keeping anything static online, because it's not, as you would say, evergreen, where people can say, well, you said this and that's not true and whatever. So if you're looking online and you're not seeing anything, you're not crazy, okay? And that's why I wanted to do a podcast series on it, because honestly, most business owners are not even talking about this, and justifiably so, because if you've just been through a natural disaster or you've had one happen in your lifetime and you've had to go through it, quite honestly, you're a little bit burnt out, and you really probably don't want to relive that emotional stress of telling someone else what to do, because it's a lot to bring back all those memories, and it is traumatic, quite honestly. So I can totally understand why there's nothing out there on this. But okay, so let's talk a little bit about the next question. What do I need to do in a natural disaster for my business? Well, first and foremost, I would say prep what you can and care more about your family and your neighbors than you do your business, quite honestly, and be ready to help if you're able. If you see the natural disaster happening, literally call your insurance company and file your claim right then, even though you don't know the extent of the damage. Because in the event of a very large natural disaster, there's kind of like a threshold number that your insurance company for that specific business is going to throw towards that area of like, this is how much we're going to just approve in claims as a dollar threshold. And then after that amount, then it gets a little bit harder to get things approved. So it's really important to get at the front of the line. And it's very similar to that governmental style grants-based thing of first come, first serve. So really get at the forefront and take pictures of the damage, take pictures during the damage if you're there. I mean, hopefully you are not there if your life is potentially at risk. Do not think that your life is worth sacrificing just to protect your business. Please, please don't. Like, it is so not worth it. Your life is so much more important. So don't stick around if it is unsafe. Okay, so with that too, let's just say this just came through and now you have to pick up the pieces. One thing I learned that was really valuable on the personal side of things as you're trying to deal with your business stuff, get real, legitimate, licensed childcare. If you have kids and you're going to need help watching them so that you can spend your nights and weekends cleaning up the damage, try to find childcare that is legitimate. And the reason for that is because actually, FEMA does have childcare recovery finances, but it has to be through a licensed childcare place that's going to give you a bill. If you have family and friends watching your kids, that is not recoverable. If you're going to pay those people, FEMA's not going to reimburse you for that. So that is one thing I did learn, especially if you have, say, kids with disabilities. There is a whole nother level of stuff within that. Say your care provider can't come for like personal care services and you ended up having to do all this other stuff. Really take count of all of the financial implications of what's going on and make sure you're keeping those invoices for those things or your receipts, right? Because there are, on the personal side of things that you can do to try to at least get a little bit of help covering those costs that you're having to incur. And now this is just the beginning. So I would say take pictures as much as you can before, during, and after repairs that are being done, especially for your insurance company, because your contractors may not simply take all the necessary photos needed throughout the process and then leave it up to you to talk with the insurance company. So even though you're not doing the work yourself in certain situations, make sure you are documenting the process. And if they're going to pull up another layer of something and all of a sudden underneath there's so much more damage, take pictures, and send them in for your claim. So if you have a claim, I highly recommend managing your insurance company like it's part of your business's job. And I am not joking. Call them regularly. Give them whatever they ask for as soon as you can. And if you cannot get a hold of your adjuster or your claims representative when you call, ask the person you get a hold of to note that you called in your file that day and what you are asking about. Do this every time you call. This allows you to showcase to any manager or senior manager the level of effort that you have put into your claim to getting things reviewed. And if there is any lag on their side of coming back to you, there should be documentation that you've been waiting on them. And the reason for this is because most insurance claims say that you have to get all of your repairs done within 1 year of the incident that you filed the claim. And if they're the holdup, you need to have this documented and you need to be able to provide information regarding, I did what you said and then I was waiting on you for this many weeks. And so I should not have to fit into this 1 year time frame because it was you that were the holdup, especially in a natural disaster when there are tons of people filing claims around the same thing. And because otherwise the insurance company can come back to you and say, well, you didn't get your repairs done within the 1 year time frame that we said you needed to get it done. So therefore, we're not going to compensate you for the replacement value because your repair wasn't done in time. And that's not okay. So really make sure that you are treating this like income to your business to make sure that you are protected, because otherwise that aspect will be by the wayside and you're not going to get any of that back. And I promise you, like, I know that it is emotionally exhausting, but you should do this. And then also, you should keep a copy of your policy and always ask for clarification if you think that something doesn't look right compared to what you have. And if you need help understanding it, you should go to your insurance agent and have them talk with you and your claim rep on the phone together to make sure that what they're telling you is accurate and in line with what is necessary. And you know how they say, like, oh, this is on a recorded line? That can be to your advantage so many times. So make sure that you always have your claim number ready. Keep a folder with all of the stuff they send you in the mail and make sure that you keep it together so you can track it as you go. And I honestly think the insurance claim information is a bit confusing in how they break down the numbers. So really talking with your insurance person and having them walk you through and understand what's in the claim is going to be helpful. So this is going to be a transition to the gawk portion of this episode because I really feel like it's important to talk a little bit more about insurance before we end, but it's not necessarily FEMA related. So just here's your fair warning. This is the gawk. So with all of this stuff with insurance companies, I think that it's really important for you to understand that there is really no recourse of action you can take against an insurance company in a lot of ways. Like there's no 1-800 number you can call. You can't complain to your state. You can't say, hey, federal government, someone's taking advantage of me. Like insurance companies kind of have a lot of this in the bag, and it's a little bit scary. Like if you look at financial advisors, for example, there are so many rules they have to follow, and there's so many protections in place around people's retirement funding and all of this because there's been a lot of scams. But the thing is, that's never really crossed over into insurance companies a lot, honestly, in my lifetime. So I kind of hope that there is a little bit more review into how policies are managed, because a lot of it is nothing for the individual that's filing the claim. Like there's really not a clear path forward as to how to fight a claim. And so one of the things that I personally had to do with something I was working on was I just had to sit down with somebody, and I just kept saying, hey, can I talk to a manager? I'm just really feeling like I don't have anyone to tell about my concerns. And, I just kept asking, and I literally had to talk to 2 managers and a senior manager. And I said, look, I'm trying really hard not to treat anyone disrespectfully, and I really would like help here. And if you look at my file and how many times I've called, I've been asking you all for help, and I'm not getting it. And so I'm asking, what else can I do to make sure you have the right documentation necessary to process this? Please tell me what else I can do to make this go faster. And I feel helpless in talking with you all because there doesn't seem to be any recourse of action for me to escalate my concerns regarding the service I'm receiving that I paid for. And I'm having like some timeline issues on this, and I really need help. So is there a way that I can escalate my concerns? Because I really do feel helpless in this situation, and it doesn't really seem like there's anyone I can go to. And I feel like the only thing I have left is to go to social media and leave comments about my experiences. And I'm really not into tarnishing a business's reputation. But quite honestly, I feel like I have no form of voice. And I want you to look at my claim, look at the documented times that I've called. Now, I want you to imagine with me someone who has a full-time job, and they're just trying to get this figured out for their family. And, I'm so blessed. I have a business. I can be flexible. I can take time when I have breaks to do this. But just like for the average person, let's say their whole home was destroyed and they're trying to figure out how to do this, and they're literally calling you on their lunch break. Can you imagine how defeating and emotionally exhausting this process is for that person, on top of losing pretty much everything they own? Is that really the reputation that your business should have? Because I don't feel like this is good customer service, and it feels like it's really defeating purposefully. And I'm going to be honest with you, like, you might not have somebody that's sympathetic. You might not, but continuing to share that respectfully can go a long ways. Because really, do you want to become that malicious person on the internet? No, I mean, I don't. But the reality is that, like, right now, in the way that insurance works, there really is a lot of lack of accountability for insurance companies to actually care about individuals. And just being honest with you, that's been my experience. And I don't think you have to get up and scary and yelling at people to get something done. Really, I don't. But if you can help people even see, like, through your lens of, like, this is what I've had to go through so far, and this is how I feel like I'm being treated. And if you can do that in a respectful way, I do think it can help you. And just don't stop advocating for yourself in a respectful way. Where I think people start getting wild and crazy, then nobody wants to help them anymore. And I mean, believe me, I have tried that in the past, but it's not a good idea. And I also regret doing that. So, and quite honestly, it's not good for your health. So just remain calm. It's going to be okay. And if you are doing anything after a natural disaster, know that the best resource you have is your friends, family, your neighbors. And when people really just like stop relying on all of the other things outside of their community and really are just human beings that are caring for one another, that is the most beautiful thing, honestly, to see real people in their community caring for one another. It's so valuable. And I know that if you're a business owner, you're a pretty scrappy person because most people don't go out and try to figure all these things out to make a living. They just work for somebody else that does that for them. And I know that your skills are so valuable in helping your community. So don't discount that and don't discount compassion because it is so valuable to caring for other people. And I know my experience, like I'm going to be honest with you, I was like 8 months pregnant when I was trying to help people. And I was just like, I can't even bend over. Like, how am I going to get in somebody's basement? And also, I am incredibly allergic to mold. So how can I be a resource? I don't even know. I feel so helpless. And one of the things that gave me so much joy was realizing that I had a carpet cleaner. Because even though it wasn't a lot, like people were trying to clean things. And I was like, hey, do you want to use this instead of like having to rent one? They're like $50 a pop just for a day to rent a carpet cleaner. I mean, it's probably more since COVID, like the prices and everything. But that alone, even though that wasn't much I could do, people were able to use it. And like, I was excited. I was excited to actually have something that I could help with, even though I physically felt like I was useless. So don't be discouraged if like physically you can't do a whole lot. Even if it's just giving somebody a hug or being there to bring a meal or just sit with someone while they're crying. Those are so human things that need to be done and they're so valuable. So don't ever forget that you are your most valuable asset to your community, not your business. You are as a human. And anyways, I digress, but that is my gawk for today. So thank you for joining me on this series through FEMA. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And I'm so excited to keep doing more podcasts on different things that are so fun for me to share with you.